Hello, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us for another edition of Coffee with Corvertis. I'm Jennifer Hugo. I'm the managing director and owner of Corvertis, and I'm with my fantastic teammate, as usual, Sam Lawson, who's a talent management specialist here at Corvertis.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me again today on our new edition of our video, and thank you so much for anyone who's tuning in.
So, Sam, you've really gone to the dark side this week, so I'd love to know what you've been reading about.
Sure. So to bring a little bit of pop culture into this before we get started, so in honor of my favorite band, AWOL Nation, releasing their new album tomorrow, they have a previous hit single titled Passion. I actually was lucky enough to come across some research that looked at being passionate about your job and how your level of passion can cause those with whom you work to take advantage of you. So the study that I read found that people consider it to be more legitimate to make passionate employees leave family to work on a weekend, to work unpaid, maybe even to handle unrelated tasks that are not part of their typical responsibilities. And they refer to this phenomenon as passion exploitation. And they were actually able to replicate these findings across a lot of different smaller studies and consistently found that people regard poor worker treatment to be more legitimate when workers are presumed to be really passionate and engaged with their work. Jen, I understand that you have some thoughts on this phenomenon as well.
Yes. So Sam, did they look at the passionate person at all to see if that person felt that they were being taken advantage of?
Yeah, that's a great question. So most of the studies that they conducted, as being able to find those results repeatedly, they didn't necessarily look at the person themselves and that individual's perceptions, which was one of the clear limitations of the study. Nevertheless, the results were still pretty interesting, but that is a really great point that you bring up, that it often is, our own perceptions, like we talked about last week, that can really impact how we feel about our work and whether the situation might, in fact, be detrimental to our performance.
Because I've been in that situation where my role has expanded or changed clearly in different ways. I've been with Corvertis for going on 7 years, and my role obviously evolved from being chief scientist to where I am now owning the company. And I did receive some concerned statements from some of my colleagues, just wanting to make sure that I was okay with how my role was expanding, and some of those concerns about, work-life balance, which we talked about last week, and all that good stuff. When I clearly am very passionate, so I don't feel that I'm being taken advantage of, and I'm always happy to grow and expand. So Sam, how would you recommend, what should we do about this? Like, what are the next steps, or what are researchers doing right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like you just mentioned, it is a lot about those individual perceptions and differences. And that kind of does tie into what we talked about last week with work-life enhancement, where from an outsider's perspective, it might look like someone has baseline definition of poor work-life balance, but they themselves may not have that perception, and that's perfectly fine. And so it is important to really dive into some of those perceptions and individual differences in personality type, for instance, to see whether that is a glaring issue. But I think, some things to consider, Jen, like you just mentioned, being passionate about your work, obviously not a bad thing at all. And we know that research links high levels of passion and satisfaction to things like productivity, performance, and even retention. But it is also to be important, or it's important to be mindful of the time that we're devoting to our work, which is something that we discussed last week. And just for leaders, I think it's important for them to continuously check in on their team members, especially those who do tend to consistently go above and beyond, just to make sure that they do feel supported, that they have the resources that they need to be successful, and just to really encourage them to approach you if they do feel like they are getting to a state where they might be overwhelmed with the work that they're doing.
But there's really two sides to it. The first one is what you just talked about, is understanding if I'm feeling burnt out, or maybe a lot of times you don't realize you're feeling burnt out until you start to see the effects of it. But then the other side is, how do you handle those passionate, the team members and the coworkers of those passionate employees that are, oh yeah, I'll take that on, and are doing all this stuff, and maybe they don't see behind the scenes that they're asking for new tasks, that their goals are a certain way, and that those negative perceptions by their colleagues that, our supervisor's taking advantage of Jennifer, that could derail your team satisfaction, or just be a concern, or create lots of negative stuff that could hurt you. So Sam, I know you always talk about knowing your team and connecting and those sorts of things.
Yeah, certainly. That's a great point as well. And really, those types of situations where, you have certain individuals on the team who do tend to be those high performers, who really have that drive to take on additional responsibility. Those types of situations might, negatively impact the team in a way where certain team members who aren't as vocal, but maybe do want some of those opportunities, need to be, more vocal, speak up a little bit more, because otherwise they are going to miss out on some of those opportunities to either grow and develop within their current role, or have some of those opportunities to advance to a role with greater responsibility as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree on that. Anything else on that topic? It's definitely something that's important to understand all those different perceptions and how you manage your high potentials. I know that's a hot area of research, is we're trying to always retain our high potentials, keep growing, succession planning, generational things at play.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key takeaway, like I mentioned, is just that being passionate about your work, definitely not a bad thing at all, because we know that that is linked to greater performance and retention and satisfaction. And, passion differs by individual. So just based on how you perceive it, you may not feel like you're being taken advantage of. And as long as you don't have those negative feelings, then that's totally fine, perfectly fine. So to shift gears, Jen, I know that you did some research this week on realistic job previews. Do you want to take it from here?
I did. Thank you, Sam. Yeah. So realistic job previews always comes back as kind of one of my favorite hiring related topics. It's definitely a powerful tool. We can see that with our clients, and just from reading the nerdy psychological literature out there. So I took a look at a few lab studies and meta-analyses. So a meta-analysis is just where we combine the results of a ton of different empirical scientific articles. So if you're looking at, health research or anything that's, numbers based, a meta-analysis gives us some of the strongest conclusions around something, because we're taking all the studies out there, or as many as we can find, that address a question, and then looking at those. And those are essentially like the people that would be in the study. So in looking at that, I found one on the realistic job previews. So Sam, how would you describe a realistic job preview?
Yeah, so what we do at Corvertis is we would present a candidate with an assessment style realistic job preview, where they respond to a variety of different questions that educate them about the organization's culture, the expectations of the position, maybe even the team that they might be working with, the style of work that they'll be doing. And then that information allows the candidate to make a very well-informed decision about whether that might be a good fit for them.
Absolutely. So they can be these interactive, I kind of call them fun quizzes that we include. If you've ever taken a quiz online where it was maybe dynamic, after you answered some questions, you got a report on, what type of character you are on your favorite TV show, or something more serious around health risk factors or anything, it changes depending on the report that you get. So the candidate actually gets a report, as opposed to just the manager, on how they fit with the organization, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And an important thing about a realistic job preview is we're not just giving the positive information. We're giving factual, true information of things that are often challenging, difficult, surprising about the role, as well as the good stuff. So with that in mind, Sam, what type of roles are realistic job previews used for usually?
Yeah, oftentimes, and I mean, they can really be used all across the board, but oftentimes for many of our customers, we use them for entry-level positions. So a really good example might be, a healthcare company or some type of organization that does different outpatient clinics and where they're hiring for some sort of role where there's going to be a lot of patient care, patient focus, to really gauge the candidates propensity toward and their ability to interact with patients in a consistently positive manner and ensuring that they are able to meet those demands, however great they may be.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you could include in there if you're hiring for medical assistants or some frontline medical roles, how many patients a day you're going to be seeing. That is the expectation. And that was one of the things that one study that I looked at that I'll say below looked at goal setting, and that perhaps when I'm confronted with that information in the realistic job preview or RJP, that affects how I set goals and how I manage those goals later on down the line. So that could be very powerful. But we also found, or this meta-analysis found, that for those frontline roles, blue collar work, et cetera, the realistic job preview can be incredibly powerful. It could be because they maybe have less one-on-one direct with another human time to understand and learn about the role and ask their questions. So they can be incredibly helpful. And one of the biggest ways that RJPs are effective, Sam, do you have any idea what the biggest way they're effective are?
I mean, if I had to say, I mean, I think they're effective just at face value because they're providing the candidate with a lot of relevant information that they may not get otherwise, during a phone screen or doing some research online about the organization. So, the way in which the questions are designed and developed are very intentional to provide as much information to the candidate as possible to ensure that they're, might be that good potential fit.
Yeah, so that's one key. You hit it right on the head. One key area is role clarity, that I have this clear understanding of, ideally, if you're creating a realistic job preview, you're thinking about what's causing people to leave. What are those things within 30, 60, 90 days that people are frustrated with that lead them to leave? And you're tackling those and educating people about them. So that's one way. Another way is just through honesty. You're revealing during typically, what's supposed to be a sales process, negative information about the job and who you are and the challenges, and you're being very upfront about it. And it's also one of the first things that people see. So I remember, Sam, do you remember doing your job application and assessment for Corvertis?
I do, yeah. It feels like it's been back in like the dark ages now, but
That was 2 years ago, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I do remember that very well though.
So mine was about 7 years ago, and I still remember it. And that's often because we remember things that were our very first experiences with something. So you're setting yourself up for success by presenting this often difficult information, things you struggle to communicate to candidates and to your new hires. You're doing it early on when they're really hungry for information. Going through the hiring process, there's a lot of uncertainty. You're eager, you're like Googling online, trying to get information, reading Glassdoor reviews, talking to friends or acquaintances to try to get information about the place you want to work. And here we're giving you all this information. So you're really going to be like a sponge absorbing it, and your candidates are going to be that way. So it's incredibly powerful. Definitely something we'd be happy to chat with you about. Our contact information is below if you want to go and explore that further. And then the richer you can make it, the better. So definitely having some written information is great, but like Sam was saying, having that quiz that, there's no wrong answers quiz, that just the candidate gets the report, and it lets them know how they align with the job, the culture, the organization. Sam, anything else on RJPs that I missed that would be important to cover?
Yeah, I think, with especially in tight labor markets, and obviously that has kind of shifted with how things have been going the past couple of months, but, organizations are consistently focused on reducing that time to hire. And so adding in just a really quick realistic job preview assessment can be really impactful into speeding up that time to hire process, because then you're giving those candidates information where they can make a decision, should I pursue this opportunity, or does it maybe not align so much with what my expectations or needs are at this time? And then, in the ideal and optimal situation, then they'll self-select out of the hiring process completely. And then your talent pool isn't filled with individuals who are unlikely to align with your expectations and your values for success.
Yeah, very well put. I absolutely agree. Well, I think that summarizes our research for the week, but I'd love to touch on what's bringing us joy. So I can start again because I don't know if I caught Sam off guard with this again, but I'm still doing the teddy bear hunts by providing the teddy bears for others to hunt in my house. So we talked about that last week. I have different, and I did go a little bit deeper down this rabbit hole. They are reading, they have little coffee mugs and other cute things. So I don't change the teddy bear scenes every day, but I change them periodically. So they're doing different things. And they're just positioned again on my cat tree and on my couch so that people looking in from the outside, all the kids that are going for walks all the time, families can see them. And it just brings a little joy to their days as well. And then in terms of my other things, my mom finished cancer treatment this week. So that also brings me some joy. And just for total fun, just to veg out at the end of a long day, I've been enjoying two things on Hulu. One is Little Fires Everywhere, which is a mini series that takes place in fictitious in Shaker Heights, Ohio, which is actually very close to where I was born. It's been a few years of my life. And then I've also started watching Mrs. America, which is on FX, but Hulu has a partnership with them. So everything that they have is on Hulu, which is kind of brilliant with the whole cutting the cord trend and everything that FX has said, hey, Hulu, let's work together and you can have all our stuff. So those are a few things in my life this week. Sam, what about you?
Yeah, that's wonderful, and that's really fantastic news about your mom. So thank you for sharing that. I think the big thing for me, I had the pop culture reference at the beginning, but my favorite band actually releases their new album at midnight tonight, so I will probably be up pretty late waiting for that because I mean, like, I don't really have that much else going on since we're all kind of stuck inside. But so I'll be up late listening to that, and then probably just doing some hiking and getting out as much as I can because it really is. It really is pretty crazy how just a little bit of fresh air can definitely boost your mood a little bit, especially if you've been stuck inside all day. So
Yes,
doing that as
that
much as
is true.
possible.
When in doubt, just get outside.
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
All right. Well, thank you again, Sam, so much for your time and sharing with us. And thanks to all of you for joining us. We look forward to keeping this going week after week. And we welcome your feedback and thank you for your likes and just incorporating us as part of your time during this very difficult period. We very much appreciate it. All right. Well, until next week, everyone have a great week and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.